You're listening to the AfterBuzz TV Network, now the largest new media platform on the web, and your #1 source for after-show entertainment.
Very good, Dean Johnson.
From the AfterBuzz Studios in Los Angeles, California, presented by Maria Menounos and streaming live thanks to Akamai Technologies, this is AfterBuzz TV's Reign After Show. We'll break down tonight's episode and get you all the latest news and gossip. And now, another post-game wrap-up show for your favorite TV show. It's AfterBuzz TV's Reign After Show.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another after show of Reign, the new freshman hit series. I am not Keaton, I am not Phania, but I am Phil Svitek. You guys know me. Keaton and Phania could not be here, unfortunately, due to the Thanksgiving holidays as they're going back home. However, I was able to wrangle up some fans of the show, and ironically enough, they are not ladies. So
not
here
ladies.
they are.
But we are blonde brunette. I think you just
straight up.
planted two gentlemen in.
Yep.
That's right. So, allow me to introduce my co-host tonight. We have Jesse.
Hello, Jesse Wilson.
For those of you who are fans of AfterBuzz TV, you may have seen him on our NBC's Love in the Wild after show.
That is true. Long time ago.
And then if you're also a fan of AfterBuzz TV, you know Oriana Leo, and I am introducing her very good friend. How are you?
Very good friend. My name is Ian Weslynn, and Oriana's on the American Horror Story show, and big fan of her, big fan of that show. Also a big fan of this show, Reign. It's surprisingly good.
I'm a huge fan.
Yeah.
I had to catch up, and I'm addicted.
Yeah. I caught up this week, and I became a fast fan. By the end of the first episode, they had me, and
it's a soap opera that really hooks you. That's for damn sure.
yeah, I kind of like to call it Gossip Girl of Thrones. You know,
It works for me.
yeah, right.
A Tudor Gossip Girl.
Yep.
Esque.
Yeah, it's kind of everything you would want.
Well, good. I mean, for fans of tuning in, this will obviously be a strange episode because you're getting the full male perspective.
Yes.
Yep.
Although,
so
Phil,
speaking
I'm a Pisces, so we'll have a little bit of that feminine
Well,
touch.
I will try and represent, and I'll talk about Hotstradamus and everything like that. Don't worry, we'll still get into the hotties.
Although he
and
wasn't
that.
in this episode at all.
At all. I know.
I think his name
really
was
surprised.
mentioned once, but that was
Yep,
it.
that was it. And yeah, I was looking forward to seeing more blood dripping from trees in his vision, but no, we didn't get it.
Well, I think you guys both share my sentiments for Kenna, and
Yes.
and also after watching tonight's episode, I kind of have the same feelings as the king, and especially if you are the king, you're like, why am I putting up with this?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. it's just-
What are your guys' thoughts on her?
Well, my personal opinion, I think she's young. She's a young girl for the most part, who falls into this typical traps that a young girl does, right? She wants that power, she wants that security, and the king is an older man. He's been around, he's done this plenty of times, but you tell he really does like her.
Yep.
Maybe not to the extent that he portrays, but he definitely has something for her, and he knows that he can win her over with sex. And keep her content with the smallest of
gestures.
things. Yep,
Yeah,
exactly.
I really, it kind of has the feeling of the third wife to me. I mean that's really what it is, but at the same time it's just, he gets to have all three, but she comes in and she wants everything from the get-go, and he's tired, he's old, he's ready to just have it be easy. And I can understand where she's coming from, but I really understand where he's coming from.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. But yeah, let's just talk about what happened in the episode with Kenna first. She's decided that she's going to be doing it. We see them walking out, waiting for the king to arrive back from Paris. She's under the impression that he will be arriving back alone, but he doesn't.
Okay,
Before that, though, go ahead. Phil.
Well, I want to ask you guys this because obviously he promised her all these different things, and she had an expectation of that. And when she goes to see him, I thought he'd really be in trouble, but it seemed like he had everything in place, and he had a game plan.
Mm-hmm.
So why not tell her? Why not kind of seek her out right after and explain her the situation? Or, I mean,
'Cause he's
obviously,
the
yeah, exactly. I think he is the king, right? He's not worried too much about what she thinks. He knows that he has her in his pocket, at least for the most part. And a king doesn't answer to anybody. And the only time he used promise, remember, like he said he hasn't used that word in a long time.
That was about please.
Or please,
yeah,
excuse
he was
me.
like, come stand by
Please.
me, please.
He uses the word please with her because he knows the smallest of little things. She's a young girl.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to win her over.
Well, and we also heard him say, I believe it was last episode, he was talking about or maybe it was 2 episodes ago, but he was talking about a king promises to everyone.
Yep.
And he makes promises, but then he only keeps the one that are good for the kingdom.
Exactly.
And I think that applies to this situation
Of course.
as well.
His
which
word is very not too heavy.
Yeah, and nobody's gonna hold it against
Yeah.
him in the end because they can't, because he's king.
Yeah. I would say though, just before the queen or before Diane shows up, Kenna asks Mary or talks to Mary just for a second about the situation, and Mary obviously has a little bit. She's worried. She's looking out for Kenna.
Has her reservations,
and I think all the other girls, they don't find out just yet.
No,
we won't get to that just yet.
They have a private just between, even though they're all walking together. Mary and Kenna have a moment. But
were they really happy? I mean, they seem kind of happy, especially one of them and things like that. But then afterwards, it started getting on their nerves too because it was all about her. I didn't quite know how to take it because, especially, as noted by Francis in tonight's episode, everyone is so fake because of obviously the structure and the formalities of all, the court life. So I didn't know how to take that from the women in terms of whether or not they actually were happy for her, jealous perhaps.
So you're talking about when at the king's party in the king's chamber, once we get and they have their little gab fest. Yeah, when I really don't think that they're happy for her. Because, I mean, when you think about it, what Kenna has done is she's basically said, I'm only going to go so far in terms of social climbing. And because, I mean, that's really what they are at court to do, is to marry themselves off. It's a sign of the times, whatever. And so right now, the king is he's old, but he's still pretty young in terms of, how old a king could be. And so she's decided, all right, I'm going to go this far. I'm going to put myself as mistress of the king. And I feel like that kind of signs her fate in a way that the other girls may not be comfortable with.
I think it's a combination of both them being a little happy because, okay, she's found her path they've come to do, if you will. But they're also a little jealous, a little bit because of the stature that puts her at. They're all looking for status, and this is a fairly high status, right? You're associated with the king.
Yep.
The problem is, and I think they're a little more realistic about it, just like I think it was, who was it, Lola, who enlightens Diane and says, Diane's a fixture.
Yep.
Or sorry, she enlightens Kenna that
Diane.
Diane's a fixture here. Her name and her initials are on the floor.
Literally written
You're
next
not
to
a
him.
fixture yet.
Yep.
Just be wary. Know that the backside of this may not be pretty.
Well, and I mean, they bring up the fact that Diane is the mother of the favorite son.
Yep.
And I actually, if we move ahead just a little bit, I loved, her name's literally, their names are written in stone.
Yeah.
And moving ahead, the king has the great line of affairs of the state are more appealing right now, and really you're getting on my nerves. But then the king turns around and during the fireworks, he puts Kenna's name in light. And I thought that compared to Diane's name being in the stone was a good contrast because it's like the lights, those are going to blow out. The stone, it's going to be there.
Without a doubt. And
we see that a little bit later in that even as they're destroying the stone, the king is, back with Diane.
I mean, that to me just shows that he's great at manipulation in the sense, okay, whatever makes you happy, and it can be the grandest gesture of all. And what girl, even today, wouldn't want to have that?
Yep.
It's like, oh, how sweet. but it ultimately means nothing. It's just okay. We're gonna
How
continue. I'm gonna
apropos, right?
Yeah.
It's the, and I think that kind of speaks to Kenna's youth, in that she's so focused on the appearance of it all that she's not worried about the substance. And
But I also think that shows the contrast between her, a few of the other girls, but more importantly against Mary. Like she said Mary's always worried. She's worried about things like this, about everybody's well-being, and she's more cautious.
Yep.
Where worrying is not my job.
Yep.
She just jumps right in. She's like, I want my status. I want it now. This is where I'm at.
Yep.
I want to be finished with this so I can just move on.
Yeah, that's a very, very astute. And I think even one of the other girls says something like, yeah, you're right. That isn't your job, or at least not anymore.
Yeah.
And yeah, as the king's consort, you kind of do get a certain reputation and a certain level of clearance, I guess, within the court. But I have a feeling that Kenna's in for a lot of heartache.
I think so too. She took the easy route. She almost bunny hopped.
Yep.
Skipped all that she was supposed to be doing at court.
When they flashed back on her and the king's first dalliance, it just in this context, I looked at it and it was, she almost didn't even care who that person was, because she was kind of in her own world, and she leaned into it before she even saw that it was the king.
Very true.
And I think that's Kenna. It doesn't matter really for her who it is. And so, yeah, maybe the king will be in for a rude awakening as well. Who knows?
I don't know. I think she gets the raw end of that deal.
Right.
Well, let's talk about somebody else who's getting a bad deal. Bash.
Oh, Bash.
Many reasons. But
poor Bash.
Poor
bastard.
Let's talk about specifically the love triangle that's been building. I mean, because we've talked with the girls at length about this, real quick with you guys, who ultimately do you want Mary with? And forget, I guess you could obviously factor in anything you want.
Go ahead. I don't know if I've formed my opinion, really, to be perfectly honest.
I mean, knowing history, it makes it kind of hard to root for one team over the other.
But it's CW ultimately.
Fair enough. So
and in history, one didn't exist, and the other one looked nothing like this.
Well, as they say at the end of the episode, maybe one did exist, because it's the whole there will those who will be remembered and those who are forgotten.
Very true.
But that being said,
true.
I think there's more of a fire or a chemistry with Bash than there is with Francis. But I'm really up in the air. I don't know.
Yeah,
what's your thoughts?
Like I said, I don't have a strong opinion on which one I would prefer, but I do see two different paths for it. One has the securities, the soon-to-be king at some point. They've known each other, at least for the most part, since they were children. They have that connection. You can tell that they do care about each other, but they're both very good leaders. One is doing for his country. The other one, she straddles both that country and heart.
Yep.
So it's a tough decision for her to leave Francis, if you will, to make out whatever. She had to be drunk to do it. I think that's a little more passion on the Bash side.
Absolutely. I thought it was really interesting. She's trying to kind of rectify the whole situation and goes, she's remorseful, but she says to him, I'm surprised you're not more remorseful. And okay, I'm remorseful, but obviously not really at all.
Yeah.
He was absolutely happy about it, but it does sting because obviously, apart from Mary, it seems like that him and Francis do have a good relationship, or at least, ironically enough, their relationship continues to get better as things happen with Mary, but it also continues to get, poisoned because of Mary.
Yeah.
And it's also poisoning the relationship between Bash and Francis.
Yeah. Well, I think the hard thing to, put into context is that even if she wants to be with Bash, it's just it's a non-starter. It's like she can, and I think her heart really does lie with Francis, at least at this point, because he's all that she's known. And so Bash is kind of coming in. He is the usurper, as it were, but he's not going to be king, and she cannot marry someone who's not going to be king. The only reason Tomas had any sort of leeway is because he was going to be king.
Exactly.
Till he met his unfortunate end, which I was really upset that they killed him off so fast. He would have been a nice little kind of recurring
he was pretty
villain.
evil.
Yeah, he was. They turned that real quick.
Let me ask you guys this, because typically we talk about how smart and not emotionless, but level-headed perhaps Mary really is.
Mm-hmm.
And tonight it seemed that Francis was very level-headed throughout the whole thing, and that Mary, in fact, was not really all there.
She's had a tough episode, though. She had a moose over her bed. She's being threatened by the heretics. Both men that she loves, she's about to lose, it seems like, or, loves.
But I mean, the guilt, at least, was certainly coming from the fact that she had done an action that she didn't want. Now, the moose head and things like that, obviously, she can't account for, but as Francis is quick to point out, it's because of that love that this was even happening.
Very true.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where I almost wanted her to tell Francis about the kiss way before, to approach it before she ends up, trying to, and he's like, I already know, I know. And so I don't know. I feel like we're seeing more of her vulnerabilities now, which is, we've seen her strength in the couple of episodes, but now for us to relate to her more, we have to see how the opposite side of those, the way that she acts with such passion, something that draws both of these men to her, is also what's driving them away from her too. Which is she can't fess up to Bash for what she's might actually be feeling, and with Francis, she can't fess up the truth.
Do you think ultimately, had she said it a little bit earlier, not that it really matters, but do you think that he would have forgiven it or given the same response?
I think it would have been roughly the same. He was hurt by it. He wanted to play it out a little. He gave them a little bit of time to find out if they were going to tell him. I think if she told him earlier, maybe he would have been. He probably wouldn't have gone to the extent that he does in the end. When we find out.
Yeah. I mean, because if we want to push through, because there's he says, "Oh, that's what you want to apologize, or that's what you're sorry for," and I think even if she had said it at that point, it would have been too late. I think maybe if she'd gone right away to him, but at the same time, this is court. Like, he keeps saying, you have to keep your emotions out of this. And what's hard for them is the fact that not only do they have emotions for each other, but even if they didn't have emotions for each other, they would be in the same position.
Definitely.
And then that's where we get to with them towards the end of the episode, and definitely call me back if I'm missing anything, but just with him, like, we should see other people. You just can't see my brother, like so clearly he's emotionally invested. Like, I feel like that's showing, like it would really tick him off if it was his brother.
But he's also showing signs of being a king.
Being a king, exactly. He's like,
saying,
well,
listen,
we're going to have
betterment
our
of
dalliances.
France, but the betterment of Scotland, for me, for the most part, you can't see my brother. You can see whoever you want.
Yeah.
And when the time comes, if it's right for France, and if you agree to it, I'll be true to you.
Also, I mean, in terms of that, partly why I think that Francis does do it, because at this point, Mary and Francis, they don't really know exactly what happened in the woods, and obviously we'll talk about that at length, but they're under the assumption that no one else was killed but this thief, right? And so that obviously in itself has a huge implication, rather than like, oh, wow, he found out a secret of mine, and that's why I threw him off the cliff, which obviously we'll talk about. So, I think there's a darker connotation to that. And for Francis, at least, he's thinking, okay, if this guy's willing to go to this length to protect her, I need...
Yeah,
I need
cut
to
it off.
make sure.
Cut it off.
Cut
now.
it off.
Exactly.
Because he
Shut
said,
it down.
Who will my
Shut it
brother?
down.
Who will my brother be when he returns?
Yeah, I loved that.
He will
I
be
loved that
different.
line. Yeah. And yeah, that's a super valid point. It's this is actual. There's actual love going on here. This isn't just a dalliance. And just like a side note, I keep being surprised that we haven't seen the Queen have her own consort, his Francis's mother. I keep expecting there to be like a scene where she's, you know, in bed with someone else, but she apparently has been faithful to the king even outside that.
Or so we're led to believe.
So we're led to believe.
She has her own.
Yeah, I'm
her own
sure some
demons.
guy will come up later in the season. But in terms of that was the other thing too, though, with Mary, Francis, and Bash, is that Mary didn't know what the cost of the sacrifice was, and she finds that out later. And I think it was interesting that they both kind of kept that from her, what the reality was of the situation. And so they're both very protective of her. They both clearly love her. It's just to what degree. And
but here's the problem. I mean, on one hand, I agree with Francis. On the other, I don't, because I get Bash's point completely. He doesn't want, there's obviously all the reason in the world for him not to tell her. But for Francis, it proves a point. It may not be the nicest truth, but hey, you know what? A, you caused this because you lied. B, this guy really does love you, and all these horrible things. And B and C, he is a horrible person. So cut it off now.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. No, that's yeah. I don't think even Francis at the end, because all Bash says is it's done, basically. And they're under the assumption that he kills the one. But more,
which is an evil task. Which
is an evil task. But is it evil because his hands are tied? It's either Mary dies or somebody who at least quote unquote deserves to.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean that gets just into the gray area of what is evil.
But hold that thought, because that will be discussed. But I also want to discuss Olivia, but Olivia and Queen, because they had their moment of in typical words of today, Olivia is trying her best. Her best is not good enough. Like, what, feelings? I love that line.
Yeah.
Yep. What are you talking about, feelings? Yeah, use your hands. I really do. I loved that twist at the end of the last episode that they're working in cahoots. I thought it was it's great plotting.
I don't know if I'd necessarily say cahoots.
Oh, they're definitely in cahoots.
I just mean that Olivia.
Baby going.
I think Olivia she's not a bad person.
Mm-hmm.
She's not doing this intentionally. If she had her choice, she wouldn't do any of this.
Yeah.
Because she says to the queen, he has feelings for Mary, and then obviously her response was feelings. But I think ultimately she's a good person. But just like every other person in this episode, every girls at least, they have to worry about their status in these times.
She's a girl between a rock and a hard place for sure. Like because she was in love with this person, that's how it kind of shook down. But she did make her choice in not wanting to leave, although I feel like that was because the queen brought her there to begin with. It wasn't an option for her to go to Paris like Francis tried to make happen. And I mean, we'll get into predictions, but I mean, she's definitely going to try and get that baby going as soon as possible.
I'm gonna have to agree with that.
Yeah, and so with that's good, but I think that's a good segue into us talking about just the Queen and Mary in this episode. Since talking about Olivia and the Queen and Mary, they had that great scene where we get to see very much their two different ruling styles. Where and I kind of just put down here, the Queen gets mean, where they're talking to the staff and they're saying, you know what, Mary's trying to be respected, and she's saying, you're going to be punished, but if we have to sniff you out, you're going to be punished even more severely. And then Queen Cat comes out, and she's just like, you know what, I'm going to burn down your houses. Sorry, not sorry.
It does highlight the differences in their ruling styles, and it shows that Mary is going to be a little bit more tactful, a little more sympathetic, and be in the hearts and minds of the people, at least first and foremost. But ultimately, if it comes down to it, we'll cut your heads off.
Yep.
Whereas the Queen's just no nonsense. Here's the hammer. You're all dead if you don't tell me right now.
I think the queen, for me at least, is coming from a place where she's done this before. And,
Yeah.
you know, every time that we see Mary, a lot of these things seem new to her.
Yes.
You know,
Yep.
she's dealing with them for the first time. What I like about them in particular is that they're right now. Again, what's debatable is that are they enemies or whatever, and ultimately, right now, yes. But by having them have a common goal, I think they might never be friends, but they could just go down to the level of rivals.
Totally.
Yes.
You know, and that to me seems very interesting.
Very-
Because it's you know, there's a huge differentiation between the two.
And I think it starts with the scene where they're in Mary's bedroom and the queen comes in and says, you know, how'd this happen? And then Mary basically accuses her that this could possibly could you've done this before.
Yep.
And it's obvious the queen had nothing to do with it. Instantly, they go to being on the same side.
Yeah.
I think it was Francis or whoever it was that said, hey, look, we all have to be on the same side on this. Let's go at it. So the main, I think, storyline for the show, ultimately, that Queen versus Mary, that doesn't play here anymore. They're on the same side against these heretics.
As we were talking about this, I did kind of just get a flash where I think there's an interesting parallel going on between Kenna and Diane and the Queen and Mary, where, well, they're both queens, but Mary and Catherine, where we're seeing just at two very different stages these same paths, and we're seeing, you know, the way that I'm sure Catherine was much more like Mary. I mean, she even in a previous episode she talks about how Mary was there when she was a kid, and you know, she liked Mary at that point. But we're seeing how they are very similar, and they're, you know, this is a flash for Mary of what's to come. She is going to become Catherine in so many ways. She will eventually grow weary of trying to, you know, rule in this super respective manner, and eventually resort to, I'm going to burn your houses down. And, you know, I just think that there's a good, as much as I love Mary, you know, it's just so easy. It's an easy thing to cross. And I think it's just a lot of foreshadowing in terms of these four, because they're kind of the four central women in a lot of ways. The other
Diane's become one.
Yeah.
More of this episode.
Well, I mean, Diane was gone from the first
while,
episode, so now that she's back, it's kind of, and I think they had her away so that they could have Kenna kind of step in. We could establish her, and now we get to learn a lot about Diane, which we will get to as we talk about the bash in the woods. Was there anything else that we had about Queen and Mary?
No, I think
so.
it's just developing, and ultimately, I think you know, for me, there's going to be that divide where eventually Mary could be more like the Queen, but there's going to be that deciding factor where she figures out a way to be nice, to appeal to the people, and still get what she wants, unlike the Queen, because she never got that. That's the long-term prediction.
Fair. Yeah, fair. I think that's a good one
True.
too.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I don't know. I think. Okay, so the men in this but this show, they all, I think I had said this before, they all think with their, you know, genitalia for the most part, the best way to get sex, and then about war and politics. The women are all worried about stature or status in this time, right? They're all trying to figure out how to increase their value, as it were. Mary,
for the men, it's already a foregone conclusion. You know, a bastard's always going to stay a bastard. The king is going to be king until the usurp, you know, his son comes.
And then Mary she's a very good combination of both parts, both the men and the women. She has the heart, and she also has that sense of duty to her country, her status, etc. Whereas I think the Queen Catherine, she is a woman, but more a man. In this respect, she's very ruthless. She knows what needs to be done to get it done. She doesn't have much compassion and much.
Well, I mean, she does, but she chooses her compassion. Like, you know, it's about Francis, because I mean, still, we have to come back to the reason why she will fundamentally never like Mary is because Mary is Francis's undoing.
Yep.
I think you're totally correct. Mary seems to be the queen in between. You know, like she's constantly in between these very different worlds. She plots, you know, like like a lot of the men do in term, or like the way that she kind of
plays the game very well.
She plays the game super well, and better than I think the queen. Well, the queen knows she does because the whole it's better than a queen I can't control.
Yep.
You know, or daughter-in-law I can't control. But yeah, anything else on them?
No, I think
believe
we're
so.
safe to move on to the big plot line. Obviously we talked about Bash, but again, right now no one knows that, and it's actually might be better that they think that he's actually capable of just killing off a thief versus what he actually did. I mean, let's talk about it, because as we watched, we didn't really give our opinions on it on purpose.
Yeah.
I mean, does it lessen or heighten what he did in terms of how evil it was, the act itself?
I think again we are seeing characters between a rock and a hard place. You know, he has to do something, and I think Bash once again shows that he's very intelligent in that he. I mean, okay, so the big twist of the episode is that he picks up what is it, Samson. Picks up Samson, the thief, to be the sacrifice, takes him into the Blood Wood, and then as soon as the guy appears, and I don't know if they ever named him, but as soon as the savage appears, he says, actually, I'm not killing Samson, I'm going to kill you. But
he worded it very tactfully. So the deal is I just have to kill someone, anyone, even someone as wretched as this person.
Exactly. And so then they fight, but while they're fighting, they talk a little bit, and it's like your blood runs through, and we get to him killing him, and then the reason why the thief still dies, why Samson still dies, is because Samson actually knows who he is, knows who Bash is. And they're also conveniently cliff horsing or something where it's just, by the way,
next to a cliff.
Right next to a cliff. Normally when you tell someone,
and you weren't holding onto the reins either, so you deserve to get pushed over.
Yeah, and
was this the only option for him? I mean, what could he have done? I mean,
I think it was the only option.
I think so too.
Yeah,
it was that rock in a hard place.
Yep.
And the difference between this is no one knew that there was a hard place, right?
Yep.
They just knew of the rock, that he had to go kill someone. He didn't. They're not going to know that
with
this secret just yet.
Yeah, and you can tell that Bash is a good guy. He wasn't intending on killing this person who didn't deserve it. Like, especially you could see it in his face when Samson talks about his 3-year-old daughter and growing up without a father. You could just see it. You could see the compassion. Yet there we go, and dude runs his mouth.
Yep.
And I even said while we were watching it, while they were talking, I was like, oh, dude, you're gonna have to kill that other guy. The other guy's gonna know.
But that's why for Samson, for me, I thought he would have been compassionate towards him because, okay, despite what may have been said, he did not kill you. Had that happened to me, I would have been eternal grateful. And as the redhead that the queen was interrogating, I would have just kept my mouth shut, like, hey, we're taught, whatever.
You stick your
neck out, it gets cut. Yeah.
Exactly. So I would have just been like, thank you.
But, I don't know. When it comes to, all right, everything I've worked for, everything I am, my family, my status, everything's going to rely on the word of this one guy, which you've already heard that words mean nothing in France.
Yeah, yeah. All it takes is him being
needing
drunk
a little
in
bit of
pub,
money,
needing money,
He's
hitting him up a little bit later. Yeah,
he had to steal for his children, his family once. This is an easy way to get paid right here.
And wait, he tells him something. Oh, we all have people to look after.
Exactly.
And even though in that moment Bash is still not intending on killing this guy, it was like, nope. And I felt so bad for Samson. I was like, oh, dude, just shut up.
Yeah.
Like, just
keep talking.
Yeah, like, oh, you're done. You're done. But I don't necessarily see this act as being evil, because really he's being forced. It's either Mary dies or someone does. So he's like, all right, I'm going to trick them and kill one of them. That's all that needs to happen. And I'm actually doing, in the greater good. He's doing something for the greater good as far as he's concerned.
And I think the real sacrifice ended up being Bash himself. He learns a little bit about himself. He learns that now I've got to protect this. Maybe he didn't really know. He knew his mom was a pagan for the most part.
Yeah.
But he didn't know that it was probably so well known, one. And then when the guy that he kills says,
he can't help,
the bloodlust is in you now.
Yeah.
You're killing me.
Those are pretty good last dying words.
Yes.
I was like, all right.
And that's that's an interesting point because, we'll obviously backtrack a little bit to the guards, but when they are actually burning, right, they say it's slow and painful, at least for the male.
Yeah.
And in some sense, could that be a foreshadow for Bash of
it's a slow burn.
He's got to go through all of this stuff.
Yeah, it is a slow burn for him, and that's going to be his fate. And yeah, let's go back and just talk about the other thing, which is the show has a tendency of, if it names a character that's not in the main cast, they will be dead by the end of the episode.
Sarah?
Yeah, Sarah, and then they named
Samson,
Samson, and then Robert. The
second you get a name, you die.
Yeah, it's essentially
almost the Star
the
Trek.
red shirt.
Yep,
Yeah,
exactly.
It's the red shirt.
Nice.
If you're an actor, you must be like, if you see your name,
You're like,
You're like, I got credits, but I'm gonna die this episode.
Maybe they named what was the soldier's name, or the guard's name?
It was Robert.
Robert. Maybe they named him in a previous episode.
I don't think
but
they did.
I don't.
But
think
they also
they
named
did.
Colin. Remember, Colin dies. He gets strung up.
He
very
gets a
insignificant.
reprieve in the second episode and then gets strung up. That was the saddest thing. We can talk about
You
that.
think about it, Butcher Boy doesn't have a name, but he has a title, and he
does,
kills himself.
Yeah, they're talking Butcher Boy, and he kills himself. Yeah, he
So
throws
he's
himself.
not murdered.
With it's just the red shirting of these characters. But what I thought was interesting in just leading up to that was exactly what we just talked about, which is they basically mentioned just earlier on in the episode, like, oh, your thing's untucked and you didn't bring me the right water.
Exactly.
And it's like, oh, well, that's coming back,
Definitely. It was a little silly, and it did highlight, hey, something's going on here.
Yeah.
And we're pretty sure that was probably poison that she was supposed to drink, because she said, what is this water? I was supposed to have mint spheres or something. I can't remember.
Mint sprig, I think
Mint
is
springs.
the word. Yeah.
And she doesn't drink it, sends him off. And then we find out that he was a heretic.
Was a heretic, and so I do like this whole, they are within the castle. Like, these people are there. It gives a sense of, it's like almost like Lost with the others.
Yeah.
They are among us.
Yeah. And inside.
Yep.
What's interesting to me the most is the fact that, how many times in terms of Bash and Francis, it's brought up, the seriousness of the issue.
Mm-hmm.
And Francis says to me, oh, he knows the seriousness, right? But it's funny because we don't really, we see a girl, we see a guy, and as later, it's like, well, how many people are there? And I think it's the girl, Sarah, who says, oh, there's plenty of us. Yeah.
Says enough. Yeah.
That's it.
And then as Robert, as he's being burned, he says, doesn't he say he will come for you?
Yeah,
you can't burn the truth. So there's a he.
Well, that's
very
the thing
powerful.
that's in the cave or whatever they were talking about. The thing that they are sacrificing to is this, and I really wonder, because this, aside from Nostradamus, or Hotstradamus is what I call him in my head, but aside from him having his visions, there isn't really magic in this show to any sort of degree. There's potions and stuff like that, but
it's smoke and mirrors.
It's smoke and mirrors. So I can't help but feel that they were going to keep with that tradition, and that might be a prediction. So I could save that for who or what's in the cave.
I don't know. I think it's going to be someone within. Again, we are getting a little bit into predictions here.
Should we
do
head?
it.
All right, let's do it.
Table that. Oh.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
So my prediction in terms of that is that it will be, yes, they're sacrificing to maybe some entity, some person that maybe Bash and Francis will eventually have to fight. That will endanger Mary, which I don't want to see them make her a damsel. But that will kind of maybe be the big bad for the season. But so yeah, in terms of the heretics, I think that's where that's headed.
And along those same lines, I think that this he that they keep talking about, or whomever they sacrifice to, I think it's going to be someone it's within the court. You know, it's someone we either know,
have we met
possibly,
already?
or maybe alluded to at some point. But it's not necessarily out there, because they're in the castle as it is, right? The butcher, the guards.
Yep.
And there's enough of us around. I think that there's someone within the court.
But yeah, the smoke and mirrors. I mean, again, so we don't hear from Hotstradamus or from the girl in
Clarissa.
the bag. Yeah, from Clarissa. Clarissa did not explain it all this episode,
No.
and I really, I think that might be for a reason. I don't know. Because I feel this was a good episode, but it also felt almost like not as much happened. Aside from this one major storyline with Bash.
Yeah.
Another, like, just on the prediction train, as we saw in the preview, the Mary and the Queen will be working together. Basically, they will unite because of Francis. But aside from that, my other major prediction is I think Olivia will get pregnant. It might be the halfway season mark kind of cliffhanger is, she's pregnant. But I have a feeling that she'll lose it by the end of the season.
So I have two predictions that go along with both of what you just said.
Yep.
One was Mary and Francis, as well as the king, they will kind of unite somewhat against Diane and Bash because they're heretics.
Yep.
For the most part. But I also think that she will get pregnant, Olivia will get pregnant, and then something's going to happen. They'll both die.
Yeah.
But that'll lose that line, I think.
Yep.
For the most part. I also think, lastly, I think Kenna and the Queen will have some sort of alliance against Diane.
Ooh.
But Kenna's going to lose in that, right? Because she's young and dumb.
Yep, young and dumb.
But still, they're going to have to go against Diane somehow.
Yep. And how about you, Phil? Any predictions?
For me, it was interesting because usually they have like a thing where you kind of know what the next goal is. This was because of Thanksgiving break. It was just a lot of images and action. So obviously for December 5th, we're going to tune back in. So I thought that was interesting to know. But I'm excited to be back.
Me too.
In the meantime,
yeah.
Where can people follow you guys?
Go right up. All right. Again, my name is Ian Weslynn. You can find me on Twitter at Ian, E-A-N, Weslynn, W-E-S-L-Y-N-N. And you can also find me on Insta as well.
You can find me on Facebook at _Jesse Wilson, JESSEWILSON, as well as Instagram.
All right.
All right, and we'll see you guys after the holiday break.
Yes, sir.
Have a
From
happy
executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
See you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.